a week since I started using the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and I got the deep purple color on the 14 Pro, but this time I decided to go with the silver one because variety. So how has this held up over time? Let's find out. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is probably one of the most enigmatic phones that I have used since I started reviewing phones on YouTube. It's taken me more time to get used to this than the 11 Pro Max, the 12 Pro Max, and even the 13 Pro Max. Now, before we get into why that is, let's cover the specs and options you get when ordering the 14 Pro Max if by any chance you've been living under a rock. The base model of the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the same as in 13 Pro Max from last year, which was $1099 in the US, but if you're in the UK, there is a slight price increase. I have no idea why, to be honest. Anyway, you get the A16 processor with 128 gigs of storage, a huge 6.7-inch Super Retina display, and an all-day battery life. So they say, but more on that later. If you're a content creator or someone who takes a lot of photos and uses ProRAW or ProRes, you can take this thing up to about 1 terabyte of storage for about $15.99 before tax. Personally, the $500 extra is a bit too much for me and it's too much of a leap, but if you're part of the regular world like me, then the base 128 gig version will suit you just fine. Apart from choosing different storage options, you also have the liberty to choose 4 different colors. That is the deep blue purple, which is my personal favorite, silver, gold, and of course the standard black color. If we're speaking objectively, then the better colors are the black color, which is a lot darker than most pictures let it out to be, and of course the deep purple color. Trust me, when you get a hold of it, you will be thanking me later. Now that we have gotten all the tech jargon out of the way, let's get to what I liked and disliked about the iPhone 14 Pro Max over the last week. Starting with the things I liked, the display is utterly ridiculous. Holy Samsung did an amazing job with this, and hot take here, and I think the display is better than the S22 Ultra. This is what Samsung gets for making displays for the competition. You can easily see the display in any difficult lighting situation in the sunniest of days without squinting or hovering your hand over your display. It's bright enough to see the dynamic island. Now, a little downside with this is at night. You need to be very careful when navigating your phone at night because my brightness for one is always on 100% all day, and when I slept and woke up in the middle of the night, it was almost blinding and it disoriented my sleep pattern for that entire night. Now, you might think this is trivial, but it does get very irritating waking up at 4 AM with a bright light in your face. Apart from having a great display, the iPhone 14 Pro and the Pro Max finally have an always-on display. Basically, when you lock your phone, you still see information from your time, the widgets, and notifications, and of course different album arts if you're listening to music. Now, a lot of people have asked and some have said this reduces the battery life. Now, while everybody might have different experiences, I have not seen any major battery differences with them on or off. At first, I hated it because I thought it was too bright for an always-on display. Compare that with an Android phone and you can see the difference almost immediately. Now, for a lot of people, it'll take time for you to adjust to the new always-on display because for many years, Apple and the iPhones has basically told us that when your screen comes on, it's a notification or a call and whatnot. So you find yourself constantly looking at your phone from the corner of your eyes. An alternative is just putting your phone face down. That, by the way, turns off the always-on display. Another thing I liked on the display, and I'm really happy Apple moved away from the traditional notch, is the dynamic island. This is where the camera and the Face ID sensor is now on. Some say it's a gimmick, but I love it, especially from a design perspective. Now, this is Apple trying to solve a hardware problem with software solutions, and I think they nailed it. It is going to be used every single time when using the phone, and it feels like a natural part of it and not just an aesthetic choice. Now, when using the iPhone 13 Pro, you never really notice the notch because it's dead space. Your brain automatically ignores it because it doesn't do anything. But with iOS 16 and the new dynamic island, you're going to find yourself consistently looking at it because it's a hub for everything you're doing with your phone, from playing music or setting timers, phone calls, and many more. Don't get me wrong, the animation is very clean, but you're going to notice it a lot more now. Plus, the space between the island and the top of the display is bigger than the notch. The dynamic island is probably going to be the most subjective aspect of the phone for many people. If you've hated the notch from day one, you're definitely going to hate this. But if you don't mind notches at all, then you get through this without any issues. The next thing I liked about the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the new camera hardware. Now, some creators have said they have found issues with theirs, but so far mine has been great for me. The best thing about the iPhone camera, and is what I want to talk about mostly, is that new 48 megapixel sensor. Now the wide angle lens has an improved 48 megapixel camera that is 4 times the amount on the iPhone 13 Pro, whereas the telephoto and the ultra wide lens remains exactly the same. Now a huge advantage this has over the 13 Pro with its larger sensor is that 2x and 3x function that allows for better zoomed in images without losing any quality. Now you also have an extra focal length with only 3 sensors. So is there a significant difference in picture and video quality between the 14 Pro Max and the older models? And the simple answer is yes, especially when it comes into zoomed in pictures. There is clearly more detail with the 14 Pro Max thanks to the new camera hardware. When it comes to the standard wide angle lens, then the difference isn't so clear because the iPhone camera still by default takes 12 megapixel pictures. To use the 48 megapixel camera, you need to shoot in Pro RAW, and this allows you to take the most amount of detail possible and also allows for impressive crops using the full power of the main wide angle lens. But you don't want to do this very often as one picture ranges between 75 to 100 megabytes per picture. Action mode is an amazing feature. It's like having a GoPro built into your phone for stabilization. As you can see, I'm not really trying to stabilize my phone when running, but the phone is doing that all by itself. Apple says that this can easily replace a gimbal. While that may be far-fetched, they are not so far off. Now to get the stabilization going, it crops in way more and it also shoots in 2.8K than 4K. With the crop, it has less shakes and gives better stabilization. Personally, I don't think it's going to replace a gimbal, and I most likely won't use this feature very often because I don't have kids or I don't have pets. But when that time comes, this will definitely come in handy. Cinematic mode also got an upgrade, shooting from 1080p to 4K 24 and 30 frames per second, and will be better for shooting videos with. The front-facing camera is definitely an improvement from last year, but as much as this is an improvement, if you're a black person just like me or you are a person of color, for some reason this makes my skin look a bit darker, which is really weird. It's something Apple and iOS need to work on. Google with the Pixel 6 Pros and the 7 Pros that are coming out are in tandem with my skin color, and I definitely look better with that than the iPhone 14 Pro Max when I take selfies. Build quality is very similar to the iPhone 13 Pro lineups, with the camera bump and a slightly wider display being the difference. Now it's not so much, but when you put them side by side, you notice it. Also, your old 13 Pro Max cases won't work with 14 Pro, so you need to get a different one. So I'll link some in the description below if you are interested. There's really nothing about the iPhone 14 Pro Max that I hated, if I'm being honest. It's an overall great phone if you can get past the huge size. But would I recommend this phone to people? Some factors have to come in. Do you have an iPhone 11 Pro Max downwards? Then yes, you should definitely upgrade. A great camera, a new safety feature, a great display, and a very good battery life. On the other hand, if you have an iPhone 12 Pro Max or a 13 Pro Max, then yes, you can definitely skip this because the new features aren't exactly groundbreaking or revolutionary. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video, don't forget to click that like button and please consider subscribing to the channel as this helps me go a very long way. My name is KJOS and I will catch you guys in the next one where I talk all things tech.